Hanging a door perfectly is less about skill and more about sequence. Don't try to build the frame in the opening and then fit the door to it. You'll end up planing edges, chasing gaps, and still getting a door that rubs or won't latch. I'm going to show you the 2p foolproof floor template method. No guesswork or years of site experience required. I'm going to show you the design and door selection, because choosing the right door for the space matters as much as fitting it correctly. And I'll show you the sizing mistake that catches builders and self-builders out. A 30-inch door won't give you the clear opening that Building Regs now requires, even though it sounds like it should. Let's first talk about the anatomy of a door, and joiners, architects and merchants will call the door a leaf. And when we say door, what we really mean is the whole assembly, the kit of parts. So starting with the leaf, you've got two choices: hollow core or solid core. And hollow core is your budget standard, usually 35mm thick. And I avoid these where I can. They kind of feel cheap, poor acoustics, little fire resistance, and they're very fragile as well. It's essentially a cardboard honeycomb between two hardboard skins. Fine for an ensuite or a tight budget, but I prefer solid core, usually 44mm thick. They close with satisfying solidity and offer proper acoustic separation. Great for bedrooms and bathrooms. You also need 44mm for fire doors, loft conversions and escape lobbies, but that's a topic for another day. Now pay attention to the stiles, the vertical sections, and this is where your ironmongery lives, and they form the structural bones of the door along with the top and bottom rails. Usually there's a middle rail as well. And a door blank is a flush face ready for painting, and here I'm priming this blank, having already hung it in its door frame. You can step up the finish to a timber veneer. Oak, ash, cherry, maple are all good choices. I tend to avoid the plastic laminates. They are used a lot by house builders. What's best is if you match your timber veneer to your flooring or your furniture. You're always trying to minimise your palette when it comes to carpentry choices. Let the artwork and the upholstery do the colouring for you. For modern properties, flush doors, keep it clean and flat. And for period properties, look at what's around you. Fielded panels on external doors allow the timber to move within the mouldings without cracking the paint. I like to use Belection cover plates, and you can see how I did that with this external door hack here. And you should never just stick fluting onto flush panels with the view to thinking that people are going to think it is a fielded panel. Now I mentioned the building regulations trap. Why this size of door? Well, for decades, volume house builders used the standard internal door size of this, which is a 1981 by 762, and this is a post-war imperial size, 6'6" by 2'6" wide, what your merchant might call a 28-inch door. We now have accessibility rules under Part M of the building regulations, even upstairs. And the regulation requires 800mm of clear opening, and this is where it's easy to make a costly mistake. If you buy something like an 826 metric door or even an 838 imperial and you account for the thickness of the leaf when opening plus the doorstop, you're not going to have 800mm of clear space, even though the leaf itself is wider than 800mm. You're going to fail the inspection. Use an 868 leaf door, and that's 34 inches. It gives you that clear 800mm, and I aim for 868 on all the main rooms, for the living rooms, bedrooms, kitchens. Now, depending on the geometry and the thickness of the door, sometimes you can manage 838. Secondary rooms, like a tight ensuite, you can drop to a 686, which is a 27-inch leaf. For a store cupboard, the same applies, but always go as wide as the space allows. If you want help with any of these issues in your home improvement and self-build projects, you can always talk to me by clicking on the link below. To ironmongery, and that is another kit of parts in itself, just like our door assemblies. Ironmongery is such an integral part of door design, but it's bamboozling because there's lots of jargon to contend with and it's expensive. Let me try and simplify it. You need levers, a latch and hinges. Don't go cheap. The price reflects the quality and longevity. I typically spend this much on a pair of lever handles with a rose or back plate, and I go for satin stainless steel, which is durable, fingerprint resistant and timeless. Avoid fancy shaped handles. They're going to date quickly and they're hard to change once the ironmongery is set in. Try and avoid penny pinching. Ironmongery is the detail on the door that your eyes go straight to, because they always go to the edges and to the shiny bits, and we immediately see the quality and functionalism. For the latch, I use a tubular mortice latch, usually 76mm, and this puts the handle further back from the edge, which looks more architectural and saves your knuckles from catching the frame if you're big. For hinges, I use 100mm satin ball bearing butts, far better than 75mm, and always 3 hinges rather than 2. And for a solid core 44mm fire door, 3 is a requirement anyway. On period properties or bespoke doors, I'll use deeper latches where rebates have already been cut, and knob handles with matching keyhole covers in contrasting timber. For fire doors, factor in your intumescent smoke and fire strips. A palm router handles those rebates cleanly, and it's the same tool I use for hinge recesses. And if you have no router on something old, practice with your sharp chisels. Sharp chisels and practice. That's the other requirement. We need to understand sizing, the structural opening for the door, the hole in the wall, and it has to account for your full door assembly plus tolerance. Now, what do we mean by tolerance? Walls are never perfect. Timber studs are stored in cold, damp warehouses and will move once they're in a heated house as their moisture content changes. Blockwork has its own masonry tolerances, which are 10 to 15mm of variance, so I allow 5mm of air on both sides, 10mm total for all wall types, and this gives you the room to plumb the frame perfectly, even if the wall is slightly out with those tolerances. I'll use shims to get it perfectly stiff. Height follows the same logic, but you must account for your finished floor level. If you lay in engineered oak over, say, 5mm underlay and you didn't factor that in at first fix, you'll be taking a circular saw to the bottom of your brand new door leaf. And we call the area under the door the threshold. Make sure the joint where the floor finishes change happens underneath the door stile and not on this line here, which is a typical beginner mistake. Also, if your house requires air transfer, for example sanitary rooms, or it runs an MVHR system, you'll likely need a continuous gap at the bottom of the door over the threshold anyway, so build that into your height calculations too. When we're building the door frame, the hardest bit, volume house builders tend to use 25mm redwood liners, and guess what? I don't like them. They're flimsy, they're prone to warping, and high quality hinge screws don't really have depth to bite into. So I prefer 33mm redwood. It costs pennies more and it's a completely different proposition. You can buy these with rebates pre-cut, or you can make your own linings from 4.8 m lengths of redwood, often long enough to get both jambs and the head from a single length. And if you have a table saw, you can even buy the next size up and rip the long sides to create channels yourself, so you can avoid fixing door stops and having a lovely chunky door frame instead. To assemble, you can use a handsaw for both the head and the jamb frames. Half rebates on both sides, glued and screwed, or cut the head rebates in an oversized head using a chop saw. Glue and screw from the top with a handsaw and trim the edges. Now, once you've got your door frames, here is the method that guarantees a perfect fit every time for your door leaf, even if you're a novice. Tempting as it may be, don't assemble the frame in the opening and then fit the door. Even experienced joiners can find jambs twisting as they drive the screws through the shims. Instead, build your door casing flat on the floor, a bit like a picture frame. Join the header and the jambs first, lay the standards out flat, and then physically place the door leaf inside the casing while it's still horizontal. Take your 2p pieces or your 2mm plastic shims, 6 in total, and slip them between the leaf and the frame all the way around, top and both stiles, and the door leaf is perfect. So it acts as a factory template, and the frame goes around it with identical tolerance on every side. And once it's square and aligned, brace it with the door still in place on the floor. Screw temporary ply braces diagonally at each corner and across the lower third of the assembly. And this locks that perfect relationship in place before anything moves. Lift the frame, leaving the door leaf on the floor. The ply bracing means you're carrying a rigid geometry locked assembly into the structural opening, and you're not guessing parallels with a tape measure. Now for the installation for a 33mm casing with 5mm tolerance, I'm using 100mm number 6 screws into the stud, frame fixings into masonry with plastic packers. You want to slip the braced assembly into the opening, fix one side first, hinge side is usually best, fix top and bottom using packers to bridge the structural gap, but leave the middle fixings until last. Driving those screws pulls the frame out of plumb, so you want to check your level constantly and adjust the pack of depth as you go before you do those middle fixings. Everybody talks about plumb and square, but with a door assembly, the most critical dimension is that the sides of the door assembly remain absolutely parallel. So you measure across the frame opening at top, middle and bottom, and that door plus gap width must be identical all the way down. If the casing pinches in the middle or tapers at the bottom, the door's going to scrape or fail to latch. The ply braces are doing most of the work for you here. Shim to plumb and drive your final fixings. Then and only then remove the temporary braces. And you can do this technique for lots of different cabinets as well as doors. I'm doing it here for this Murphy folding bed assembly built out of birch ply, and you could also do it with something like a little bathroom sink cabinet. 3 things in summary to keep in mind. Number 1, avoid assembling the frame in the opening first before you put the door up. Build your casing on the floor around the door leaf. Number 2, don't use 25mm frames. Number 3, don't ignore the final floor finish at first fix. Get the structural opening right, do the tolerance. You're assembling a well-designed, predictable system. I've got a full video on getting your first fix stud work perfectly plumb and square. And if this helps, please give me a thumbs up, it really helps, and I'll see you in the next one.